Good afternoon and welcome. Over the past few months, have seen a lot of one another via computer screens. And on behalf of Penn State, I want to thank all of the trustees for their engagement and thoughtful contributions to meeting the challenges of COVID-19. We realize you've been juggling many challenges with your work and families. We appreciate your dedication to your role as university trustee and your continued efforts to guide Penn State through these unprecedented times. I also want to acknowledge the monumental efforts underway by President Barron and his leadership team. They have needed to make countless difficult decisions under wildly uncertain conditions. Underlying all of their work has been an adherence to three guiding principles. First and foremost is the health and safety of all students, faculty, and staff who comprise the Penn State community. Second is the continuation of world-class instruction, research, and clinical operations. And third is protecting the financial stability of the institution. We commend President Barron for his steady leadership and commitment to these principles. Later in the meeting, he will provide an overview of Penn State's response to the crisis while offering some thoughts on the future. And this will be an excellent reminder of the many facets of the university operation that have been affected by COVID-19. On behalf of the board, I also want to thank all the administrators, staff, and faculty for their efforts to support Penn State's teaching, research, and service operations. They too rapidly adapted to a new normal and are largely continuing the functions of the university. Although we still have many difficult and complex decisions that will require our continued collaboration, our decisions will remain focused on developing a plan that is in line with the latest directives and guidelines from government and public health authorities that will allow Penn State students, faculty, and staff to return to campus in an in-person instruction in the fall. Of course, we won't yet know that is achievable, but is our objective, even as we consider alternative scenarios. While there are certainly challenges ahead of us, we still have much to celebrate today, beginning with our graduates. There are a few experiences that are as important to our graduates and to us as celebrating graduation. We know that these many students and families, including Provost Jones's family, are disappointed they will not have the chance to celebrate their graduates on campus this weekend. Still, we hope that our students and their families will participate in one of the many virtual experiences planned to celebrate commencement. And then we will celebrate again at an in-person gathering when our campuses reopen. So I want to reiterate, the president and administration is committed to having an in-person, on-campus celebration of graduation in the future. To the graduating students who may be watching today, I want you to know how proud we are of your intelligence, optimism, and willingness to keep moving forward. You leave Penn State with an education that has prepared you with the experience, knowledge, and keen insight to succeed in what we will be a changed world. On behalf of the board, congratulations. We also celebrate and welcome new faculty senate and student leadership, Elizabeth Seymour, Assistant Teaching Professor of Anthropology, History, and Women's Studies at Penn State Altoona. She will be succeeding Nicholas Rowland as the chair of the Faculty Senate. Anja Siegel, Associate Professor of Landscape Architecture, has been elected Faculty Senate Chair-elect, and elected as Secretary is Lisa Mangel, Assistant Teaching Professor of Biology at Penn State Erie. Lastly, today we will have an information presentation by outgoing Faculty Senate Chair Nicholas Rowland. We want to thank Nicholas and Judy Osmond, outgoing Secretary, for their service to the University Faculty Senate. For the University Park Undergraduate Association, Zachary, who actually Matt and I had a chance to meet with yesterday, Zachary McKay was recently elected president, Lexi Pascal as vice president, Hibu Alvar was elected president of the Commonwealth Campus Student Government, with Awash serving as vice president. For the Graduate and Professional Student Association, Alex Chow will serve as president, with Julia Kelleher serving as vice president. And for the World Campus Student Government Association, Sean Walsh will continue to serve as president and Stacy White as vice president. Congratulations to these new faculty and student leaders. We look forward to working with them, beginning with our July meeting cycle. Please note that the board met this morning in executive session to discuss various privileged matters. We will now proceed with today's business. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and Shannon, please report on the attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All trustees are in attendance today except for Fagula, Rivera, and Wolf. So we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Shannon. We have 10 action items for consideration today. We will begin with agenda item 3A, approval of minutes from February 25th, March 19th, and April 14th, 2020 meetings of the Board of Trustees. If anyone thinks that the minutes should be voted on separately, please say so. Otherwise, I will ask for a motion to approve the minutes for February 21st, March 19th, and April 14th, 2020 as presented.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Next, we have agenda item 3B, approval of deferral of the date of election of trustees by agricultural organizations, societies, and associations. The decision to defer the election of trustees by agricultural interests was made in consideration of public safety concerns and the inability for interested parties or groups to meet in person for caucuses and the election. I will ask for a motion to approve the deferral of the date for election of trustees by agricultural organizations, societies, or associations to a date to be determined by the Secretary of the Board, which will permit in-person caucuses and election processes in accordance with applicable public health and safety guidelines.
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? I got a bell, but I don't think that's discussion. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. We have agenda item 3C, proposed naming of the proposed art museum. Yesterday, the Finance Business Capital Planning Committee unanimously voted to recommend the proposed naming of the proposed art museum, Palmer Museum of Art. At this time, I'll ask David Gray to provide some remarks and context for consideration for agenda item 3C.
Thank you, Chair Dambley. Following the recommendation of the Facilities and Academic Unit Naming Committee, the university intends to name the proposed art museum at the Penn State Arboretum the Palmer Museum of Art. The original donors, James and Barbara Palmer, unparalleled support, laid the foundation for Penn State's art museum to be ranked as one of the top university art museums in the nation. The Palmers' total cumulative gifts to the art museum are valued at more than $50 million, well over half the construction budget, which is the primary reason to continue the Palmer name on the new museum. After the Palmers' passing, the bequest of 200 works combined with the 450 works previously donated by the Palmers ranks the couple as the single largest contributor of art to Penn State in its history. Yesterday, the Finance, Business, and Capital Planning Committee unanimously voted to recommend the proposed naming, subject to all necessary approvals, including construction approval by the Board of Trustees, anticipated in July 2021.
Palmer Museum of Art.
Mark, I think you cut out. Did you say that are you asking for comments, or are you asking for a second?
I'm sorry, Jay. Someone must have muted me. But may I have a motion to approve the proposed naming of the proposed art museum, Palmer Museum of Art?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, this is Jay.
Yep.
I just wanted to say a couple things. I knew the Palmers from the time I was fairly young, and I have tremendous respect for their commitment to Penn State and what they've done and their philanthropy. However, I'm going to vote to abstain on this, and I just want to make sure people understand why. This is not a for or against vote. What I just think is timing is, given all that we are dealing with now and all the challenges, I think it's important that we send a message to students, to employees, and to the people of the Commonwealth that we have a lot of things that we're working on. I think they're looking to us to see what we're doing. We got an email from an emeritus trustee this week where he talked about the must-have projects and things we should be focused on. I agree with that. I've also gotten communications from employees and students that are very concerned about the future. And I just think the timing right now is not right. And that's why I'm abstaining. I really hope to look forward to a time when things have gotten back to where we want them to be, and we can progress with these type of projects that are not necessarily must-haves. But that is why I'll be abstaining today.
Thank you, Jay. As just to remind you, we are not approving
Right.
the funding of the construction of this. We are simply approving the naming of this. Dr. Barron, would you like to say any words, or are you fine? Okay.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I just want to point out that this is a celebration of philanthropy and gifts to the university, and the decision on the construction does come later. And this also recognizes the fact that we sought to have additional donations for the construction of about $14 million. The total commitments mostly documented, and just a couple, three that are verbal, total almost $19 million. Many of those individuals as well are providing those resources for naming opportunities within the building. It is the largest philanthropy for any building at Penn State outside of Pagula Ice Rink, which was a single donor. So this has tremendous support from our alumni and from our community members. So as I said before, the vote on construction is something that comes much later. This is a vote in celebration of philanthropy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barron. Any other comments? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention?
Aye, me.
Alice Pope, abstain, please.
And Jay Paterno abstains.
Yep, got it. Okay, you have that, Shannon?
And Mark, thanks.
You're welcome.
Jay allowed me to talk.
Yep, no problem. No problem at all. Okay. Next, we have Agenda 3D is the proposed revised tuition schedule for 2020 summer semester, as noted in Appendix 1. I will ask David Gray to provide some remarks and context for our consideration of Agenda Item 3D.
The university is requesting approval of the revised summer 2020 tuition rates as outlined in Appendix 1 of the board materials in light of the ongoing pandemic and the acute fiscal strain it is causing for students and their families across Pennsylvania and across the country. Students can absolutely expect the same high-quality Penn State courses and experience delivered remotely. The projected slide shows the proposed rates for lower division undergraduate tuition, which, subject to approval, will be adjusted according to a tiered tuition structure already in place. That is, Tier 3 rates for Abington, Altoona, Barron, Berks, Harrisburg, and University Park, and Tier 5 rates for all other campuses. Graduate and World Campus students will also see a decrease in their tuition. They will be billed at a maximum of 95% of the normal summer tuition for their program. Yesterday, the Finance, Business, and Capital Planning Committee unanimously voted to recommend the proposed revised tuition schedule for 2020 summer semester.
Thank you, David. May I have a motion to approve the revised tuition schedule for 2020 summer semester?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a quick question, Mark. It's Mary Lee.
Yes, Mary Lee.
So David, can you refresh my memory? You recently met with all the business officers for Big Ten, AAU, other schools. Is there anyone else out there doing this that we know of?
I met recently, a couple of weeks ago, Mary Lee, with my counterparts from the Big Ten, and I asked them specifically if any of them had plans to drop their summer tuition rates for the upcoming summer sessions, and nobody responded that they had plans to that effect. So I think we appear to be unique in that respect, at least among the Big Ten peers.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Mary Lee. Any other questions?
David Gray, David Hahn, could you just, for clarity, when you look at the undergraduate, you see the Tier 3 and Tier 5, everybody in Tier 3 has the same numbers across the line, and everybody in Tier 5 has the same numbers across the line. But then in the graduate side, under Tier 3, there's difference between Tier 1 and Tier 2, and then the same thing in the subsequent group. Could you just clarify that, please?
The differences for the graduate tuition rates?
Yes.
If Mary Lou is on the line, perhaps she could bring some clarity to that. I'm not quite sure. I see the distinction that you're referring to, David.
I'm here, David. This is Nick. The difference is that at the graduate level, we don't really use the tiering structure, but the amounts represent a 5% discounting of the prevailing rates. And so that's why the numbers aren't structured the same way as they are as for the undergraduates, David.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carries. Agenda item 3E is the consideration for interim operating budget for the university for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2020. I will ask David Gray to provide some remarks and context for our consideration of agenda item 3E.
In order for the university to have an approved fiscal operating plan for the year beginning July 1, 2020, it is proposed that an interim budget be adopted. Due to the pending status of the state appropriation, it is recommended that no action be taken at this time on changes in tuition, salaries and wages, employee benefits, or other necessary expense increases. A final budget will be submitted at the July 17th, 2020 Board of Trustees meeting when the state appropriation is clarified. Yesterday, the Finance, Business, and Capital Planning Committee voted unanimously to recommend the proposed interim operating budget for the university for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020.
Thank you, David. May I have a motion to approve the proposed interim operating budget for the university for fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 3F is proposed approval of amendments to Penn State University bylaws section 3.03 and 5.09 as noted in Appendix 2. I will ask Juliana Potts, Chair of the Governance and Long Range Planning Committee, to provide some remarks and context for our consideration of agenda item 3F. Juliana?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. The amendments to the university bylaws encompass three areas. First, the elimination of the subcommittee on architect and engineer selection and removing all references thereto. Second, a provision providing for the delivery of an annual capital plan information update to the board. And lastly, various conforming changes. All of the changes can be found in sections 3.03 and 5.09. The Governance and Long Range Planning Committee unanimously approved all of these changes at our February meeting, and we now request full board approval.
Thank you, Juliana. May I have a motion to approve amendments to Penn State University's bylaws?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 3G is proposed approval of amendments to the Penn State health bylaws as noted in Appendix 3. I will ask Juliana to provide some remarks and context for our consideration of agenda item 3G. Juliana?
Sure. Thank you, Mark. Many of the revisions to the Penn State health bylaws were conforming changes, such as replacing gender-specific pronouns with gender-neutral pronouns, removing Penn State health titling conventions for leadership positions which no longer exist. For example, President CEO is changed to CEO and Chief Operating Officer position is removed altogether. And adding new positions, Associate Secretary and Associate Treasurer, for example. The revisions also clarify Penn State University's power to appoint and remove certain directors to the Penn State Health Board rather than elect and remove. One substantive revision reflects the separation of the role of the Dean of the College of Medicine from the Chief Executive Officer of Penn State Health. The revisions clarify that the Dean will continue to serve as an ex officio voting director on the Penn State Health Board. Lastly, the Penn State Health Bylaws revisions explicitly state that the terms of any ex officio directors commence and end automatically without appointment or removal at the same time the ex officio's director's term in office commences and expires. the dean of the College of Medicine automatically becomes an ex officio director of Penn State Health upon his or her appointment as dean, and his or her term on the board ends when they are no longer dean. The Governance and Long Range Planning Committee unanimously approved all of these changes at our February meeting and now requests the full board's approval.
Thank you, Juliana. I want to remind everyone to please mute their lines. May I have a motion to approve amendments to Penn State Health bylaws?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor for saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We will now adjourn the meeting of the full board and call the meeting of the Governance and Long Range Planning Committee into session to consider a resolution related to the approval of appointment of directors to the Penn State Health Board. Chair Potts, please resign.
Thank you, Mark. I note that a quorum of the committee is present, and I believe all the members of the committee were notified ahead of time that we would be called into session here. The action before us is to consider recommending to the full board the reappointment of the slate of directors for Penn State Health that is listed as action item H in today's agenda to a one-year term commencing July 1, 2020. This information was already provided to you in board effect as well. Are there any questions from the committee regarding the reappointment of the proposed slate?
Chair Potts, this is Keith. I'll abstain from voting on this issue.
Okay, thank you, Keith.
This is David Hahn. I'll be abstaining as well.
Thank you, David. Okay, may I have a motion to recommend the reappointment?
So moved.
All right, and a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. There being no further business to come before the meeting of the Governance and Long Range Planning Committee, we will adjourn. Thank you, Mark. I think that concludes GLRP.
Thank you, Juliana. The meeting of the full board is now back in session. Continuing with agenda item 3H, proposed approval of a reappointment of directors of the Penn State Health Board. May I have a motion to approve reappointment of directors to the Penn State Health Board?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Mark, Keith Moster, I'll abstain from this vote as well.
Okay.
David Hahn, I'll be abstaining as well.
Kathy will as well.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 4A is the election of trustees representing business and industry endeavors. Each member of the board received a communication from Shannon forwarding the recommendation from the selection group on business and industry trustees. In accordance with our standing orders, the selection group, composed of 5 members of the board, providing the names of 2 candidates for confirmation by the board of trustees for election as trustees representing business endeavors. After consideration, 4 candidates, the selection group recommended that Mark Dambley and Walt Rakowitz be confirmed for a 3-year term beginning July 1. I suppose I should probably abstain from this. I guess. So may I have a motion to approve the election of trustees representing business and
I'm
industry?
abstaining as well, Mark.
Okay, thanks, Walt.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion, abstentions, Walt and myself. Thank you. Agenda item 4B is the election of an at-large trustee. Each member of the board received a communication from Shannon forwarding the recommendation from the selection group on at-large trustee. In accordance with our standing orders, the selection group, composed of 5 members of the board, provided the name of the candidate for confirmation by the Board of Trustees for election as an at-large trustee. After considering 2 candidates, the selection group recommended that Matt Schuyler be confirmed to a 3-year term beginning July 1. May I have a motion to approve the election of an at-large trustee?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Mark, I will abstain from this
Yep.
vote. Thank you.
Yep. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And Matt abstained, and motion carries. At this time, I'll ask President Barron to provide his report, which will focus on the university's response to COVID-19. On behalf of the board, I want to express our support and appreciation for the tireless efforts and outstanding leadership President Barron and his administration have undertaken to position our university to continue providing outstanding education to our students and service to our communities throughout this pandemic. This has been exceedingly difficult, requiring folks to go above and beyond their normal responsibilities. On behalf of the board, I want to thank Dr. Barron. And just off script, I just can't tell you, Dr. Barron, how proud we are to have you as our president. You are functioning at full capacity. You are really leading us through some very challenging times with a very, very steady hand. And I'm observing, we're all observing your administration responding so positively to you. And you have our priorities, I think, very, very well aligned. First, the safety of our students and our faculty and our administration, and the financial aspects of our enterprise. And just can't thank you enough for your stewardship in these tough times. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I have to say that I have just a great team. The people pitching in, thoughtful, how they're doing their work, the amount of time they're putting into it, their expertise. It is it's just a pleasure to watch them work and operate. But thank you very much. So I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully you see that, and you will tell me if you don't. I am trying to. Okay. Do you see that now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon. And before I present my report, it's my great pleasure, as we always do on this date, to recognize the new Evan Pugh University professors at Penn State and the Penn State laureate for 2020-2021. The Evan Pugh Professor is the highest honor that can be bestowed by the university on its faculty. There have only been 75 individuals who have received these professorships since the title's inception in 1960. It is given to faculty whose research, publications, and creative work are of the highest quality, who are acknowledged nationally and internationally as leaders in their fields, who are involved in pioneering research or creative accomplishments, and who demonstrate excellent teaching skills. This year we have 2 honorees. I'll begin with Susan Trollier McKinstry. Susan is the Stewart S. Flashen Professor of Ceramic Science and Engineering, Professor of Electrical Engineering, and Director of the Nanofabrication Facility at Penn State. Her research in the area of thin films has impacted technology, including tunable filters and antennae, miniaturized sensors, and micro-machined analytical instrumentation, and high-frequency biomedical ultrasound. Last year, Susan was elected to the National Academy of Engineering, which is among the highest professional distinctions accorded to an engineer. I'm also proud to note that Susan is a Penn State alumna, having earned her undergraduate, master's, and doctoral degrees in ceramic science and engineering. Joining Susan as a new Evan Pugh University professor is Penny Chris Etherton. Penny is a distinguished professor of nutrition, and she oversees the Penn State Cardiometabolic Research Lab. She is a world-recognized expert on the effect of diet on established and emerging risk factors for cardiovascular disease. Currently, Penny is chair of the Lifestyle Council for the American Heart Association. She has been honored with the 2018 Dannon Institute Mentorship Award from the American Society for Nutrition, among many other awards. On behalf of Penn State, I wish to extend our congratulations to Dr. Trollier McKinstry and Dr. Chris Etherton for their outstanding work that brings great honor to Penn State. And now I am also pleased to announce the Penn State Laureate for 2020-21. This annual faculty honor was established in 2008 to bring greater visibility to the arts, humanities, and the university. In this role, the laureate is a highly visible representative of the university, appearing at events and speaking engagements throughout the Commonwealth. I would like to thank Steve Wagman for his service on the laureate selection committee. I know it's always challenging to choose just one person from a very accomplished group. I'm now pleased to announce that the laureate for the upcoming year is David Whitwer, Professor of American Studies at Penn State Harrisburg. David's scholarship focuses on the impact of union corruption scandals on modern American politics and brings together the intersecting historical fields of labor, politics, journalism, and organized crime. Last year, he was honored with an Excellence in Teaching Award at Penn State, and I look forward to see how he shapes his year as a Penn State laureate. And now on to the president's report. And this report basically is focused on navigating the global pandemic. And what I have done is to provide a timeline so that you can see the evolution of the work that's been done at Penn State and get a sense of where it is that we are going. So what we see first is that Penn State began closely monitoring the new strain of coronavirus in January. And we restricted university-affiliated student travel to China and recommended against any travel to China. We consulted experts to develop international travel guidance. So you would see in each of our decision-making components a focus on statements from the US Department of State, CDC, World Health Organization, United Healthcare Global World Watch Intelligence Database. And at this time, the University Health Services began screening and precautionary measures for those with respiratory symptoms and fever. In February, we offered affected student communities on campus support and assistance because of what was going on in their home countries. We launched a dedicated COVID-19 website to provide regular updates to our communities. We joined the global effort for open access to emerging coronavirus research. We canceled and suspended faculty-led programs to CDC Level 3 advisory countries. We called home students studying in Italy and offered assistance to PSU travelers with chronic diseases in CDC Level 2 advisory countries. We recommended a 14-day quarantine for travelers returning from China, Iran, Italy, and South Korea. At the beginning of March, we made the decision to cancel spring break travel for embedded courses and student organizations. We canceled all remaining study abroad programs and directed students to return home immediately. We began contacting all students abroad to offer help and to be aware of what their plans were. We then established a major task force effort during the first week of March. This set of 12 task forces were ably honchoed by Provost Nick Jones, and the groups included one on communications, campus health preparedness and response, study abroad in support of our international students, general emergency preparedness and response, our interaction with our community and coordination, semester and summer course delivery and enrollment management, commencement, summer and emergency accommodations, general business continuity, research support, athletics, camps, and other large events, and academic issues arising from the coronavirus. So you can see this is a very broad and comprehensive list. I refer to this as the tactical management of the university in the midst of an emerging pandemic. So this is a group that has been meeting at 7:30 in the morning, usually for an hour and a half, 3 days a week, so that not only are we have task forces that are busily working away on these topics, but we have an opportunity for there to be sharing across the leadership of the university. March 8 through 16, Penn State Health hosted a meeting to discuss COVID-19, enacted a temporary changes for hospital visitation. All classes began taking place remotely as of March 16th. That's the first day after spring break. One of the wisest things that I think we did was not to have our students come back at the end of spring break. They would have been told to head home within about 3 days. And if you can imagine everybody coming back and having a large number of students, the potential that we would become a super spreader event right then and there, but also to imagine all of those students having to leave or stay in place 3 days later, it would have truly been a nightmare. What was remarkable is because of the expertise that Penn State has been building in online education, it was truly remarkable that 63,000 students were in remote classrooms by 10 a.m. of the first meeting. We also offered prorated on-campus housing and meal plan reimbursements. Staff began telecommuting. We focused attention on student support emergency funding through targeted fundraising effort, now about $480,000, thanks to 2,625 donors. And earlier today, we heard from Rich Bundy on where that effort sits, because it changes by the minute. But a great outpouring of support, including from many of the leaders of the university to help support our students in their need because of the pandemic. We also made the decision not to alter the campaign goal or the timeline. We still believe that we will reach both the goal and within the time that we have planned. And we are currently ahead of schedule. There's a lot of additional activity that's going on. The Huck Institutes of the Life Sciences provided $2.25 million to 47 teams of researchers from 3 campuses, 10 colleges, and 25 plus departments to conduct COVID-19 research. I will tell you, this is one of the most potent examples of what research universities are all about. In the midst of everything, we steered resources to seed grants to have our faculty begin to work in order to serve our Commonwealth and our nation. So I just put up a couple of examples here, including developing a prototype for testing site, a protective booth to aid the health industry, created an online dashboard to monitor the spread of COVID-19, developed a biosensor platform to detect coronavirus in enclosed spaces, created a system to sterilize N95 masks so that they could be used, and many other areas for which the research at Penn State is contributing to solving the problems presented by the pandemic. March 17th through the 30th, we closed on-campus recreational facilities and all non-essential operations. Library and research labs operated with reduced hours. We held virtual town halls for students, families, faculty, and staff, and had more than 30,000 unique participations in the town hall. We announced that the university will cover all worker salaries through April 30th. If you remember, at the very beginning, I said that we had 3 primary goals. One was the health and safety of our faculty, staff, and students. The second was to get our students to the finish line, earning their credits and making sure that they could graduate. And the third was that we would work hard to promote the financial well-being of our faculty, staff, and communities. And as part of that, especially not knowing the evolution, we worked to cover all worker salaries, even if they were working, it had to be at home and were unable to work in order to support our very valuable employees. We reminded students all off-campus social activities must be suspended. and we implemented alternative grading scale for the spring semester. In doing so, that reflected the fact that moving to remote education for some presented challenges, and this allowed a much more flexible grading scheme, which I believe was very, very effective in terms of getting our students to the finish line. There was a lot of additional activity related to our faculty. We extended the tenure clock by 1 year rather than having teaching and research interrupted. We determined that the SRTEs, which is the tool that the students use to comment on teaching excellence, we decided to administer that, but not have the results used in the evaluative process by administrators. We launched remoteteaching.psu.edu with tips, training, and FAQs to enable faculty to provide highly interactive synchronous instruction when possible. We developed guidelines to retain fixed-term faculty to the extent possible, even during significant times of significant budget and enrollment reductions. A second major task force effort was established on April 1, and that was scenario planning. The idea here is that while we were working on all of these different tactical efforts to make sure we were managing in the face of the evolution of the pandemic, we started to look at the coming year and the next year in terms of what might happen to the revenues and operation of the university. It was determined in the scenario structure to look at a best case, a more likely case, our best guess of what might happen, and a worst case. And this reflects everything from how the state might respond to their budget shortfalls. Most importantly, a look at tuition revenues based on the fact that international students that were freshmen might be unlikely to come in the fall, regardless of what we do, because of delays in opening of visa offices and processing, and in a sense that the more likely student would be an in-state student, and the least likely student would be an international student. We also looked at different projections for whether or not someone was a freshman or a continuing student, and to the worst case in which we would be fully remote as still in the fall. And in that case, with tuition revenues down about 30 to 35%. And in each case, these scenarios also reflected a percentage of students that might be retained remotely versus in the case that was necessary. So these scenarios became the basis of our budget planning. April 1 through 15th, we developed new protocols to protect the health of employees whose responsibilities still required their work on campus. Penn State Extension began offering coronavirus-related resources. Registration for online courses have topped 78,000 with 4.5 million page views. I think you would find it remarkable at the number of things that we would do normally that then moved through the efforts of so many to be virtual delivery. We also extended virtual delivery of courses into summer, and as you and proposed that the tuition be adjusted, and that is of course something that you just voted on doing. We canceled all in-person summer camps through June 19th. In terms of the federal stimulus for which the vote occurred during this time period, we were informed by the U.S. Department of Education that our stimulus allotment is $55 million. The university paused to assess its use, $27.497 million for students. For all intents and purposes, the university is basically a pass-through of federal funding for cash grants to students. We expect to announce next week the methodology for that distribution of funds to our students. $27.497 million came directly from the federal government for institutional use, and this is our key to employee support and meeting federal guidelines for the funds. To date, the U.S. Department of Education has suggested that they intend to provide maximum flexibility for universities to use these funds. We also had a number of additional activities with our community. We initiated We Are Moments to celebrate the works of students, faculty, and staff. I think all of us understand that we are living in a world where you can hear lots and lots of bad news. And in the midst of all that bad news, we kept learning about all the wonderful things that Penn Staters were doing. So the research community donated 10,000 pieces of PPE to Mount Nittany Medical Center, Penn State Health Services, and the Hershey Medical Center. We had the virtual performing arts celebration that Penn State presents, which attracted nearly 8,000 views from 23 countries and 47 states and 3,500 archive views. This was essentially a half an hour, 4 days in a row, in which our students perform remotely, and we had alumni performing remotely, and all joined together in a celebration of Penn State. And I must admit, watching a young student who was under an underpass in New York City doing a dance performance at which people started to gather. It's a very talented young man. And the whole purpose of it was social distancing, but still having art. And he kept telling people, go away, you're not supposed to be watching me, I'm doing a performance. And in LA, an alum joined him, and the two of them had a spontaneous dance performance 3,000 miles apart. If you haven't seen it, it's well worth seeing. Another example, New Kensington Nittany Neighbors initiative that aids and supports students that were living off campus. Just so many different wonderful things from our community. We now move to April 16th through the 30th. We announced that events through June 19th needed to be canceled, postponed, or held virtually, many of them being held virtually. Enhanced online offerings and support for students taking summer courses. Career Services ramped up virtual career counseling resources. You don't know how much I appreciate the fact that I can be talking to a student and the student is graduating, and they were going to the career fair and had interviews and were really worried about what their job potential was. And they learn and they get contact from Career Services saying that they'd set up interviews virtually for that student. It makes me incredibly proud to have so many people sit there and say, my job hasn't changed because of this. I just have to find a different way to do it. We also announced adjusted salaries for May 4th through June 30 for employees who can no longer perform their jobs due to campus shutdown. It is a tremendous challenge for the university to keep people fully employed who are at home and cannot perform their jobs, when in many cases, the areas for which they work, we are not gaining revenues. And we offered 50% of their salary, which if you add the federal stimulus of $600 a week, largely keeps those employees whole and ensures that our workforce continues to be able to pay their rent and put food on the table. The next step in terms of major task forces is also heartening, because even though it is challenging, it is the opportunity to look forward. And this is our scientific underpinning of the pandemic, which is led by experts so PSU can make decisions based on facts and on data, a return to work group, and a return to campuses and communities group, which is largely student focused. So those groups have been established and are working hard, and they will guide Penn State to its reopening and the methodology of its reopening. Some additional activity in terms of community health and outreach. The University Health Services moved to telehealth and set up testing in the ambulance bay as a way to promote social distancing. The pharmacy began offering curbside service for prescription pickups. CAPS, our Center for Psychological Counseling, continued to offer vital student services, including same-day phone support, individual counseling through telehealth, and daily virtual life hacks sessions. University Health Services, Legal Services has been expanded to Commonwealth campuses. WPSU supported K-12 learning with the Pennsylvania Department of Education for 105 school districts. These are areas for which broadband is not sufficient to be able to provide K-12 learning remotely, and there's WPSU providing that support for those school districts. Our 21 launch boxes and innovation hubs are providing free remote courses and other resources to community, business, and citizens with the idea of helping businesses make it through this trying time. Some additional activity by alumni, thousands of alumni have stepped up to support others. So here's an example of Ed and Helen Hintz, who made a $100,000 gift to the Student Emergency Fund. We saw the Shanghai and Beijing Penn State alumni chapters raise $3,500 to purchase masks for the University Health Services. The Hazleton alumni chapter collected food for the community. The list goes on and on. These are just examples to make sure that I am reminding everybody the degree to which Penn State alumni are pitching in. Admissions for summer and fall 2020 are, of course, a critical part of our budgeting and our success. The total undergraduate applications for summer fall 2020 are at 100,519. First-year baccalaureate applications are down about 0.3%. But if you remember, last year was an enormous increase from the prior year. This is a very healthy number of applications. Paid accepts are at 15,337. This is down about 6.8%. Prospective students can extend the deadline for submitting their deposit. Normally, this is May 1, but this allows them to extend it to June 1. So 5,800 students have requested an extension. So what that means is the year-to-year comparisons here are rather problematic, because we have a very large number of students, and frequently the Commonwealth campuses, their acceptance occurs late in the process. So we have 5,800 students that have requested this extension. It makes the comparison difficult. International applications, though, are down about 11%, and paid accepts are down 2.5%. Out-of-state applications are up 5%, and paid accepts are up 0.3%. Pennsylvania applications are down 4%, and paid accepts are also down 10.7%. But again, I caution that we not read too much in these numbers, considering the number of students that have requested an extension to make their decisions. And of course, we have very little idea of what the melt might be between June 1 and the start of the fall term. Celebrating our graduates. This occurs tomorrow. The plan, actually, it begins tonight with Schreier Honors College, but we have planned a virtual university-wide commencement. Colleges and campuses are holding complimentary virtual events with specialized online content. This has been remarkable. I hope that you will tune in to commencement tomorrow, because I think you will find that it's quite engaging. And after that university-wide effort, we will see the individual campuses and colleges add to it. And I think a lot of thought has gone into it, and a lot of effort for, led by Barb Attero to do a really fine job. But as our chairman mentioned, we're planning for an on-campus ceremony celebration once it's safe to return to our campuses. That has been promised from the beginning, from the first moment that we decided to make sure we conferred the degrees here because they were earned, and then have the celebration in person at a later time. We mailed all graduates a mortarboard and a tassel, and Stratcom is using social media to recognize achievements. I also know that an awful lot of our graduates were very excited about getting a mortarboard and tassel in the mail. Penn State Senior Week celebrated outgoing seniors and welcomed them into the Penn State Alumni Association. Planning for class of 2024, as you know, we will make the decision by June 15th about the status of second summer session and fall semester. We are operating under the assumption, and we're working towards opening the fall to residential education. But we will have until June 15th before we have to decide whether or not we have to change those plans. Second session of the summer could possibly have a limited start with student cohorts advantaged by being together. And so we're already looking and planning to see if this is a good way to start, a more limited start, are able to test our use of PPE and social distancing and some of our other programs, as well as making sure that a cohort of students that are advantaged by being a cohort can begin their education. So plan A is open residentially in the fall. June 15th trigger if conditions or federal state guidelines do not permit opening. The budget impacts. We are operating under what we believe is the most likely scenario in budget development. We have hiring restrictions and a plan for zero GSI for raises for faculty and staff, with the exception of those individual faculty that are tenured and promoted. We're requiring a 3% cut in the unit's education and general fund budgets for fiscal 2021. With the support of the board, we propose to freeze 2020-21 tuition to help ease COVID-19 hardships. We're implementing capital cost saving measure, including several delayed and deferred capital projects that will save nearly $60 million. And we have the potential and are supporting the idea to borrow funds to smooth out the financial impact over multiple years, because we realize this is an abrupt change and we will begin to recover in out years. Looking ahead, Penn State maintains critical reserves, which can be used to help manage the deficits if revenue losses exceed our best estimates. Our strong online learning capacity can enable international students, for example, to take courses remotely until travel restrictions are lifted when they can return to campus. Our fundraising success will continue to play a vital role in the university as the economy recovers. You know, one great example is that Student Emergency Fund. And our research enterprise is continuing to show a very solid trend in generating competitively awarded grants and contracts. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I end my presentation, and I'm more than happy to answer questions if there are some.
Thank you, Dr. Barron. Do any members of the trustees have any questions of Dr. Barron? Considering we've been talking regularly and spoke.
Yes, I thought maybe it might just be nice to see a perspective from beginning to end and how we stepped through all of this process and how we're stepping forward for the future. But I'm very happy that the board has maintained a high level of contact so that you've seen a lot of this as it evolved.
Yeah, I think that's true, Eric. You know, you've been very transparent with us, and the board in return has been very, very engaged with almost 100% participation on our weekly get-togethers. So, thank you, Eric. And
hey, Eric is Jay. Just want to say, you know, back in March when you made the call over spring break, you know, as somebody who lives in this community and is dependent on the healthcare system here, I think you made the right call. You were ahead of the curve on it, and I think the university leadership should be commended for that. And I think you guys have done a great job keeping us in the loop on things too. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Barron. I'll now call on Nicholas Rowland for a report on this year's Senate activities. Nicholas?
Thank you, Chair Dambley. Share my screen. Okay. So thank you, Chair Dambley and members of the Board of Trustees. I'm honored to address you today and to report on the work of the Senate. Ever since spring break 2020, we've had quite a year. And in this brief presentation, I will explore the Senate's response to the coronavirus through a deceptively simple lens. But before we do that, let's cover some brief background about the Senate to set the stage. We are 200 elected faculty members, making Penn State one of the largest faculty senates in the country. And because those 200 faculty members represent more than 6,000 faculty spread to all four corners of the state, we're also one of the most complex and distributed senates in the country too. What are we responsible for? Of course, core academic policy is our bailiwick, hence the emphasis I will soon place on fair student grading that President Barron had alluded to. But we also participate in discussions beyond the academic side of the house. For example, we provide input on healthcare, benefits, student life, collegiate athletes, and athletics, and so on. In terms of the Senate itself, we are nearly 100 years old, thanks to the board. And in 1966, we voluntarily self-reorganized. We adopted our current structure with an elected faculty chair, and at that point, effectively asked the president of the university, who was the standing de facto chair of the University Faculty Senate, to please step aside. So, as promised, I plan to explore the Senate's response to coronavirus through the deceptively simple lens of grading. So let's go back to mid-March, smack dab in the middle of spring break. The president announced that all courses would be taught in a remote learning environment and at the same scheduled time that they would have otherwise been taught in a traditional college classroom. This was a Herculean lift. And imagining the inevitable, the Faculty Senate was already thinking about final grades. What would it mean to grade students on work that they're doing after this massive but absolutely necessary switcheroo? After all, at the foundation of higher education as we know it is the hardworking student whose coursework is fairly and unbiasedly graded by an expert faculty member who grades the student within reason, free from political pressure and pressure from university leadership. We had to find a solution, and we at Penn State were not the only ones. By mid-March, there was considerable discussion about grades. Students were speaking up about the need for clarification. For example, this story that you see projected now about the University of Pennsylvania students pleading with administration to find a solution for grades. Or this story about the California system with some students asking for a proverbial wash on all the grade books by giving students all A's. Or either that from there, moving from conventional quality grades to full-on pass-fail system for all students, all of course in the noble effort to lower the pressure on students. CNN even got in on the discussion, indicating that pass-fail was the only remaining compassionate solution for students. Once higher education, inside higher education joined the bandwagon, the concept of moving all students to pass-fail spread across the nation. The Chronicle of Higher Education, which is a very powerful voice in decision-making in higher education, all but demanded pass-fail for all. Now, I'm happy to report that in the days leading up to every one of these stories that you just saw, Penn State already was hatching a plan. And it was not a mechanical move to pass-fail. Penn State has a unique tool in our grading system, which is a satisfactory, unsatisfactory grade, wherein a satisfactory grade is C or better, and unsatisfactory is D or lower. Meanwhile, those pass-fail grades being used around the country meant pass was a D or better, and fail was, well, failing. So neither one of these systems would individually work at Penn State, as we learned working with administration, but a combination of those systems had real potential. And if you take a look at those dates, I'll go back. This is the 17th of March when this is revealed that the Senate is exploring our options. That's 1 week later, and we had a new provisional grading systems outlined for students. This new temporary grading system had 3 completely new grades: a satisfactory grade, meaning C or better, demonstrating that a student could make progress on their major courses. We had a simple passing grade, which meant D, demonstrating that college student was making progress on their general education courses. And of course, we had a no grade, which would stand in for students that were in the situation where they would achieve an F. Now, the bottom line, faculty enter. This is really a crucial move that I think Penn State made correctly here. Faculty still enter their conventional grades just as they would in any other semester. And then once those final grades are entered, the student then has the option to turn any or all of their grades into the optional grades, not impacting their GPA and still allowing students to make progress in their major studies and their degree. So why do we do this? It's fairly simple. Imagine your son or daughter who even in these trying times still earns an A. Well, if Penn State had moved to a simple mechanical pass-fail system, that student would get a pass, along with all of their peers earning C's or even D's. And we thought that simply was not fair to our students. Sure, students earning an A going into spring break, who now have a C come to the end of the semester, that student may very well now want that satisfactory grade and has every option to do so. In the end, we simply analyzed the situation and we, together with administration, found an alternative option that fits the needs of our students. Okay, next I'd like to give you a few stories from the front line before I talk about the advances of the Senate has made over the year. So number one, the move to teaching online was a major challenge for our faculty, and I am deeply proud that they were able to accomplish this. It is nothing short of a miracle in moments, it feels like. However, I'd be remiss not to admit that there were some bumps along the way. It is now not uncommon to hear dogs barking in the background as the ever-threatening mailman walks past the faculty member's front door. It is also not uncommon now to see a faculty member momentarily mute their microphone after their son or daughter walks into their home office asking about all the things that children ask about. It's been something of a wild ride, but we have hung in there all the way. Second, well, teaching remotely is one thing, learning remotely is another thing entirely. We moved classes online using a product called Zoom. Now, because of the internet demand needed to download the incoming video feed and upload your video feed, many students reported having never appreciated Wi-Fi more than ever. Sorry. In fact, one of the best stories I heard was about a biology student who needed access to powerful internet in order to do her biology laboratory simulations online while at home in her rural community. The bandwidth she had access to simply could not support these complex online simulations, so she called to have improved internet installed, but alas, the provider refused to install the system in her home at a time of quarantine. So you just gotta love Penn State students in a moment like this. She called back and arranged for the internet service provider to show up, install a modem and wireless router in a self-contained weatherproof box, and then subsequently hang this contraption on a tree outside her bedroom window, providing her with all the service she needed to fly through her biology simulations. Now, it would be not the whole truth if I did not also admit that this shift has had differential impacts on our students. There was a story not long ago in the New York Times that is literally a mimeograph of the conversations I have had with students here at Penn State. Some students, when asked to return home after spring break, simply return to their families' summer homes, living a comfortable, safe, isolated life with outstanding internet. Meanwhile, other students return home to a far more complex learning environment. There are stories of students doing their coursework in the family car, parked in a Burger King parking lot, or to Sheets, in order to get enough free Wi-Fi to go to class remotely. Some of them really struggle with this, but I think that it reflects something really important I cannot underscore enough about the residential experience, about being on campus, all of us together. And that is that even the wealthiest student, under normal circumstances, lives in the same 16 by 10-foot dorm room in a residence hall next to a student who was sitting in a fast food parking lot in pursuit of a higher education, taking final exams not a day or two ago. There is something really special about bringing all of our students here together, a leveling of the playing field that is still the hallmark of higher education, and that is still the real game changer for many of our students. So moving on, I'll bundle the final 3 items to simply reassure everybody is that even in this time of crisis, shared governance, as President Barron has alluded to, is operating at full capacity. That advocates for our students and faculty are relentless, and that we have and will continue to exceed, as I say on this slide, because of and not in spite of our shared Penn State values. So on my final slide, here are a few updates from the Senate. In an attempt to advance the diversity of our faculty, we've increased equity and inclusion in faculty hiring procedures in a recent policy change. We have successfully advocated for the improvement and advancement of undergraduate advising in Penn State. We've started to carefully track and analyze the promotion rates of more than 1,000 non-tenure line faculty members so that we can monitor treatment of our faculty on short-term contracts who are not on the tenure line. And of course, the last 2 items together, which were referred to by President Barron. We have also protected faculty members from the misuse of teaching ratings at a time of crisis in a parallel move with our shift to protect students from the misapplications of grades through our new optional grading systems. And everybody on the board, I'd like you to know that everything you see on this slide, that and more, that is what the Senate has accomplished since coming back to work from spring break. So please know that the Senate is working hard and we're not sitting on our hands. So, as noted before, the Senate is here to serve, and as you can see, we are here to stay. So thank you very much for your time today. It has been more than an honor to be part of the Board of Trustees and contribute what I could, where I could, and I suppose when I could. So thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you very, very much, Nicholas. Really appreciate you, and thank you for your leadership in supporting the many shared governance decisions required to be made very quickly over the last few months. We really, really do appreciate it. And this morning in our executive session, I spoke about what good things that we've been hearing as trustees on the participation of the faculty in these last few months, all the time, but particularly in these last few months, and pivoting to the online learning and also working in these 12 work streams and hopefully getting us back onto campus. So it's been great. Our sessions that Matt and I have had with you, we've enjoyed it. I appreciate your constructive input, and we missed you at yesterday's call. So thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you.
Okay. Turning now to the report on election of trustees by alumni. Trustees Stenell and Tribeck served as tellers for this election. Trustee Tribeck, will you please provide your report of the election results? Rob?
I'm sorry. You guys can't hear me on mute?
Yeah. It's a little challenging, but we got you now.
All right.
You there, Rob?
Sorry, guys. I apologize. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
I apologize. It was going in and out there. Lori Stenell and I served as judges for the alumni election to the Board of Trustees. KPMG was engaged to observe the tabulation of ballots, which occurred yesterday. The 4 individuals met the threshold for receiving 250 nominations, expressed the desire to serve, and met the criteria for election. A total of 18,809 ballots were cast. I will read the total number of votes for the 3 candidates receiving the highest number of votes, resulting in a 3-year term beginning on July 1st, 2020. Number 1, Joseph J. B. Paterno Jr., 14,654 votes. Number 2, Alice W. Pope, 13,205 votes. Number 3, Anthony P. Lebrano, 12,919 votes. We appreciate the interest of the Penn State alumni in participating in this important process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Rob and Lori, for your participation. May I have a motion for acceptance of this report?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please by indicating by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion
Hey,
carries.
Mark, are Alice and I, do we have to abstain from this or not?
I don't know, actually. Frank, do you have an opinion on that?
I think they should abstain.
Okay, do you want to abstain? I think I'll pass it up. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, good. So all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? B, J, and great. Well, listen, congratulations, Jay and Alice. Welcome on your reelection. It's been great working with you. We look forward to working with you in the future. Our congratulations back out to Anthony. We look forward to Anthony's return in a productive, constructive manner, and we look forward to Anthony's return. And we'll, I'm sure Matt and I will reach out to him in the next week or so to congratulate him on his return. So thank you. I want to acknowledge and thank all our trustees for their tremendous commitment over the past 2 months to attending weekly board briefing sessions, additional off-cycle meetings, and countless hours spent away from your own professional responsibilities and your families. Your leadership, guidance, and support have been so important to determine the actions the university has taken in response to this pandemic. And I think, this board in the last few years has really begun to work well together. I think it's been very heartening in these challenging times, how we've come together and really worked collectively and had really good dialogue, communication, participation in a very, very constructive way. And so on behalf of Matt and I, thank you for your support and your participation. It's with some sadness, actually. In closing, I want to acknowledge outgoing trustees Robert Jubilier and Keith Mosser. It's been a pleasure getting to know the senator and serving with you, and I regret that we cannot be together personally to express our appreciation for your dedication of time and service to the board and the university. Bob, it's been great spending time with you, and you bring a lot of wisdom to the board, have brought a lot of wisdom to the board, some great perspectives, and we've appreciated that, and we'll miss you. Hopefully we'll see you again either in July or in the fall to appropriately thank you in person. On a personal note, Keith Mosser has been my mentor from day one. Fortunately, I'll get to continue to see Keith. We're good, close personal friends, and but Keith, you've been awesome from the time I came on the board close to 10 years ago. Your leadership throughout the board, your governance and leadership during very troubling and trying times when you were chairperson for over 3 years. A very, very steady hand, very measured, thoughtful, compassionate, just an all-around awesome person. And we're going to really, really miss you. Fortunate you'll be chairman of the board of Penn State Health, so the enterprise will still be able to avail themselves to your leadership, which is unwavering and just really, really special. And we appreciate your potatoes. We appreciate your tailgates. We have so much to appreciate for you, but thank you on a personal level for how you made me feel when I first came onto the board. Before, I don't even know if I had gray hair back then. So thank you. I would like to provide both of you the opportunity to say a few words. So Senator, I would offer that to you first, please. Hold on a second. Where are you, Senator? There you go. Senator, you're muted again.
Okay, you can't hear me.
Now we can.
Yeah, there you go. You can hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Honestly, I've never been very good with this technology. Mark, thank you very, very much. Honestly, wow, what a ride. Anyhow, I want to thank, first of all the members of the board. It's been a wonderful ride for me. I've had a wonderful career, spending 32 years in the Senate, 6 years here, frankly, working in the Senate and here for the best interest of my alma mater, Penn State University. And I am so grateful for the opportunity to do so and work with so many wonderful people of all areas, whether I don't care whether you're agriculture or business industry at large, alumni, we're all Penn State, and we're all going to do the very best for Penn State. I think in the coming year, it's probably going to be a huge challenge for Penn State in all the things that they have to deal with the academic, with the students who are mixed up and angry, and those who don't want to do it remotely, and those who are going to sue, and so forth, etc. You're going to have issues. If I'm an emeritus trustee, I'll be more than happy to contribute, but your voting is going to be a major issue. I appreciate so much the staff that has been absolutely, and I was again blessed in the Senate to have some remarkable staff. But when you come to, frankly, the staff here, it just doesn't get any better. And to Eric Barron, I have wonderfully watched you grow in the office of president of this board. And Eric, I think you've done a fantastic job. And thank you so much for all you have done. And to Nick Jones and to David Gray, who I've worked with on so many things, and Steve and others, oh my. Again, I came from a body that had some wonderful staff, but doesn't beat this staff. This staff has been nothing short of absolutely being remarkable. Lastly, to Mark Dambley and Matt Schuyler. Mark, it started as a good road. It became a rocky road. But I want to tell you, buddy, it's a smooth road in the last couple of years. I've watched you grow in the job. You have become a leader. You brought us together. And for that, I'm sitting here with goosebumps saying, thank you. Thank you for listening to others. Thank you for recognizing that it was better for this board of trustees to be united than to have alumni trustees and this trustee and that trustee. We're all members of the trustee, and if we disagree from time to time, that's life. But the minority will have its say, and the majority will have its way. But we need to work together for the best interests of Penn State. To Matt Schuyler, wow, what a vice chairman you've been, and there's no doubt that you're going to be the next chairman of this board. And I look forward to working with you. You have always answered my phone calls. You've always listened to me when I had suggestions. You will take this board to even a higher level, I'm sure, because the cooperation and the unity that I think is going to come can only come from leadership. Having known that as a leader, I know what it takes to be a leader. And leadership is bringing people together, listening to everybody, and doing the very best you can. To all of you, I wish you the best of health. At this time, we are in unbelievable historical times. And I frankly don't know where it's all going to end. I keep thinking I'm in a science fiction movie, but it's for real. Stay healthy, stay well. Thank you so much for all your support. I look forward to continuing to work with you. Heck, what the heck? We are Penn State. And I'm so happy to have been a part of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. Thank you for those kind words, Senator. Very, very much appreciated. Thank you for your call. earlier this week. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of Matt. Matt, feel free to say thank you to the Senator yourself.
Yes, no, everything you said, Mark, I agree with. Thank you, Bob, for all your great service and for all that you've brought to the university, and look forward to your continued contributions and alumni status. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Bob. Mr. Mosser, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mark. Well, Penn State has set me up for success in my career. It was where I met my wife of 49 years of marriage, and my son, my daughter, all Penn State grads who are now running our business. I'm really honored to be able to give back to Penn State, to serve on the Board of Trustees since 2008. I'll be now transitioning to being seen and not heard. That's former chairs are automatically emeriti trustees now. So I appreciate all of you who have supported me over my tenure on the board. And I also really appreciate all of your support today for allowing me to continue to serve Penn State by having me reappointed to the Penn State board. So I'm really not going away too far. I look forward to working at Penn State Health, and I appreciate, I can't start mentioning names. I'd forget some because there's so many people involved in my tenure serving on this board. I've gained some friendships that will be lifelong lasting, and I appreciate everything and the opportunity to serve. So thank you all, and thank you, Mark and Matt, for allowing me to say a few remarks.
Well, thank you, Keith. I am truly saddened by your departure, and Bob's, of course, but fortunately we'll be able to continue to see you, and thank you for all your service, again, in the leadership roles you played. And I know lots of us call on you when we're looking to bounce ideas and thoughts and positions. And so hopefully we can continue to do that. The board staff has a small token of appreciation that you will both receive. And again, our sincere thank you for all you have contributed to Penn State. And hopefully either in July or in September, when we again get back in person, you all will be able to attend and we'll be able to appropriately celebrate. I want to note that our July public meeting of the board, originally scheduled to be held at the York campus, will be deferred until July of 2021. If we're able to hold an in-person meeting this July, it will be held at University Park. Otherwise, we will continue with a remote format. Please remember to continue to take care of yourself, your families, and each other. With our agenda concluded, the meeting is adjourned. So thank you and have a good weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone.